Hi, I'm Annie Botticelli, and welcome to my July 2019 horoscope report for you. It is my intention for this video to give you the information that I believe that you need to make this the best month possible and learn a little astrology while you're at it. Definitely go to my website, anniehelpsyou.com, where I have a very extensive astrology blog, including blogs on the new and full moons and how best to use those power periods. If you are interested in learning astrology and you resonate with how I teach, check out my astrology apprenticeship program, also at anniehelpsyou.com. Definitely check out my new book, that has become a beautiful bedside companion and purse-toting companion for my fellow spiritual seekers, an Amazon bestseller, Radical Prayer, Transform Your Life and the World in 28 Days. And you can see that at radicalprayerbook.com. So what do we have in store for you this month? I'm going to go into lots of details. Let's check them out now. Hello, Libra friends. Welcome to my July 2019 horoscope report for you. We have a wild month of 2 eclipses, 2 new moons, Mercury retrograde. We definitely have a massive amount of jolts and changes and surprises in store if you haven't already started experiencing those, because often we experience eclipse changes 4 to 6 weeks before the actual eclipse. So May, June for sure. Lots of potential changes could have already been coming to you. If not, they could still be coming. So we have a lot to talk about this month. There's a massive focus on work, employment, your place out in the world, your purpose, what you came here to do. Things involving father and father figures are coming up in a huge way. Opportunities for massive spiritual expansion as you get through one particular human plague that I'll talk about. And there's a lot of potential expansion for writing and publishing as well, where even though Jupiter is still retrograde, you might feel writing projects brewing. And as we get more into August, a lot of things are going to open up. I'm going to go into a lot more details about that. So we've got a wild month and I've got lots of details for you. So the rest of the flow is going to be this way. I'm going to drop in the charts that I'm using for the reading and discuss at length for the early, middle, and late degree placements what I see going on, including this second new moon that's in a beautiful aspect to your placements. And then I'm going to pop in a Mercury retrograde tutorial, which you may be tempted to skip over because you're like, la, 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 I don't want to hear about Mercury retrograde, right? But we spend half of our lives with Mercury in retrograde. And the things I'm going to talk about in the tutorial are definitely going to come up for most, if not all of you. So if you understand them, you can navigate through them better. Then you'll see me back on the screen, and I will talk about the general transits and the dates of note and the tone of the month and other pieces that I believe you need to know to have the best month possible. So let's look at the charts now. Okay, so we're going to talk at length about the things that I see here for Libras this month. First, we want to know if you're an early, middle, or late degree placement. Early is basically September born or 0 to 9 degrees. Middle, October 1st through 10th or 10 to 19 degrees. And late, October 11th through the rest of the sign or 20 to 29 degrees. I often get the question, is this reading for my rising sign or my sun sign? The answer is both. What if you have a sun, a moon, or a rising in Libra, then this is for you. And I do recommend that people watch horoscope reports for both their sun and their rising at minimum. Those who watch also for their moon will get additional insights because they're each windows that we look at to see what it's going to be like in this period of time. And those are happening at the same time, and just as true. Okay, so the first thing we want to talk about is Mercury retrograde and these accompanying groupings of energy. Okay, so you can see there's a lot going on in the 10th house for early degree placements. This also includes Mercury retrograde, which will go back there. You can see for the middle degree placements, very full 10th house, including Mercury retrograde in the 10th house. Late degree placements, also very full 10th house, and Mercury retrograde in the 10th house. So sometimes aspects that we look at will be different when we look at the early, middle, and late degree charts. And some other things we check out, you may see that here. But when we're looking at this cluster of planets, and this strong showing of energy, including the Mercury retrograde, that is actually going to be all the same for all early, middle, and late degree placements. So I'm going to use the early degree chart right now to talk about some things, but the things I'm talking about are relevant for all of y'all. Okay. When we see a strong showing in the 10th house, this has to do with work and our place out in the world. So we often see opportunities, obstacles, challenges, things coming up as it relates to work and career and jobs. Because there's so much energy, there's all these different factors that are affecting. So the sun is bringing light, vibrance, warmth, possibilities, creativity, solutions for work. Now, by the way, as I'm talking about this, I am aware that some of you don't work anymore. And for those of you who don't work or don't care about work, there could be something going on with your place out in the world, like your purpose, things that you're here to do, things that you're here to be known for, things you're here to spend time doing. Some of you, this will have to do with, and this could be any of you, whether you're working or not, father or father figures. So the things I'm about to describe, these things could show up as it relates to your dad or your relationship with your dad or your relationship with authority. This is a big thing that's coming up now for Libras. Okay? Libras tend to question everything, and they definitely question authority. But at the same time, they have this people-pleasing aspect. It's this really weird dual thing that goes on where it's like, in some ways you don't put up with any crap, right? Because you can see past all of it. But then in other ways you have this desperate desire for harmony and peace and a knowing and understanding instinctively of what people need. And you seek to supply that, So there's this whole story about authority could become relevant. So some of these things might come up if this job stuff that I'm talking about isn't relevant. But in any case, so the sun brings the warmth and vibrance and possibilities. The North Node means that there are keys to your highest expression this lifetime that have to do with work or career or purpose or these things. So the way you get on your personal North Node path is by paying attention to your place out in the world or your relationship healing dad things or authority things. Wherever Mars is, it's like a little border collie. There's excessive, obsessive focus, so you may be very motivated about work. And Mercury brings information and news. And when Mercury is in retrograde, it brings possibilities from the past, problems from the past. So you could be having a workplace issue, and that could be what Mercury retrograde is bringing back up. You could have, you could be up for a raise or a promotion that maybe you had a chance for before and it comes back up. You can have, somebody from a previous employer contact you and that comes up. In general, if you are job hunting, I know a lot of my Libra friends are job hunting right now, you will generally find more success in this period of time by going back to places where you worked before, back to places where you have contacts, places you've applied before. Anything where you're redoing or going back to rather than something brand new may hold more value at this time. Now, there could be some opportunities for some brand new things because of the eclipses, so don't, definitely follow your flow, follow your intuition. If something brand new comes in for you, it doesn't mean you can't accept it. If you need a job and a job comes in, follow your flow and you could be totally fine to accept it. But in general, a higher percentage of the time, if you're looking and you have to figure out how to allocate your resources or your energies, it's going to have some sort of tilt to the past. Okay, so as the planets move through Cancer, this is sort of an awkward energy. It's 1, 2, 3, 90 degrees. 90 degrees brings pressure. Okay, so as all these planets move through Cancer, that puts pressure on your Libra placements. Sometimes the pressure can just seem like it's, without purpose. But usually from the astrological standpoint, it's trying to make you do something that you've been avoiding. So if you see a massive amount of resistance come up, my simple answer to that is look up EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique tapping, for resistance and tap it away. Because there are certain things where the pressure is on and you have to clear the resistance in order to be able to make a clear decision about what you have to do. Okay, so that's going to be one factor that is affecting you. At the same time, we have planets moving into Leo, and those Leo placements are super sweet for you. Okay, so that's 60 degrees, and that's a wonderful angle. What usually happens with 60-degree angles is it puts things on a counter, is what I always call it. Okay, so we have ingredients. Those are ingredients. On a counter, I always like to say to make a pie. And if you come back in and you're irritated because you're like, where's my pie? This angle gives you the opportunity, but you have to actually do something with it. So you have to make the pie. There are some times that it brings just sweet things in without you having to do anything, but a lot of times with these 60-degree angles, I see like an opportunity is presented and you actually have to take action with it. And that might be coupled in here with the pressure that we talked about with this, Leo stuff, that you have to actually make the pie. And if you have a resistance to making the pie, or what might happen once the pie is made and you're overthinking it, right? A Libra wouldn't overthink things, right? Of course, I'm being facetious because you guys are overthinkers. All that mental energy, you like think yourself into the ground. So if you're having problems making decisions, I would get a book called Marriage of Spirit, one of my all-time favorite self-development books, but it's also practical. Marriage of Spirit, you can get it on Amazon. The woman that wrote it and the guy that helped her to get it out are amazing. In section 2 of that book, there's an exercise called Squares. It will change your life to do this exercise, and anytime you have a problem where you can't make a decision, if you do this, it will make things so much easier for you. So I highly recommend you do that. Or anything else that works for you to stop overthinking. But that's our job for you, is to try to help you out with that, right? Okay, so we also have 2 new moons this month. The second one is around July 31st, or thereabouts, depending on your time zone. It's at 8 degrees of Leo. I'm mentioning this because of this beautiful angle we talked about. So anything that goes on in Leo is sweet for all Libra placements, and there's an additional bit of yumminess if you're from 3 degrees to 14 degrees or so, roundabout, or 13, I guess around 13, 3 to 13 degrees. So basically 5 degrees before or 5 degrees after 8 degrees. So the closer you have to 8 degrees, the more that's going to impact your Libra planet. But just an extra bit of sweetness there if you're in that designation. Jupiter's still in retrograde, so ambitions might be running a little lower than usual in some ways. Even with all this energy in the house of ambition, if you still feel like you can't really push forward, follow your flow, because Jupiter is retrograde until a little bit into August. And when that happens, sometimes ambitions roll into the backdrop. So you might notice, come mid-August, once the retrograde shadow for Mercury wears off and once Jupiter goes direct, that things will move along more quickly and things will be more clear. So if you're not certain about what to do, then you'll probably have more certainty by middle August. Those of you who are in the early degree placements, you've been having Chiron opposing your Libra placements. I know that is not fun, so I'm really sorry about that. It can bring up every kind of situation where you're feeling like or actually are a victim. All right, so this is intended to help you clear the victim mentality. In a world of duality, if there's a victim, then there's a victor. And if there's a victor, then there's a victim. So if we can just wipe out the whole equation and know that we're all conscious beings having a spiritual experience and try to shift it, then you can transcend this whole polarity that has been a plague to humanity. You middle and late degree placements, you haven't been experiencing this yet unless you have Libra placements between 0 and, we'll say, 10 degrees. You might have, another Libra placement between those, and then Chiron would be opposing that placement for you. So if you're finding this comes up, it could be from something like that. But in any case, it's coming for the rest of you. So the more you can kind of clear your consciousness about any gripes or grudges or chips on your shoulder, is really going to facilitate expansion for you. And a lot of magic and opportunities will open up from that. All Libras have the energy of Uranus still thrashing through Relationship sector. Early degrees, you pretty much have it in the 8th, middle in the 7th, and early in the 7th. Late degree and middle degree placements, you have Uranus in the 7th. Early, you have it in the 8th. There are some differences with these manifestations, but one thing that's the same is that it tends to add some volatility to relationships. And either you're the one that's being volatile, or you're pulling in volatile and unstable people, or you're being random or exerting freedom, or other people are being random and exerting freedom, or sudden weird things out of the blue are happening. But I know that it can be a stressful space for relationships, and that's not just romantic. It could be business, clients. But the plus side to this is that as you heal the issues of security that are underneath whatever you're feeling about what's happening here, it can start to manifest in more positive ways, or maybe even simultaneously manifest in more positive ways, which can bring people who are really free-thinking and unique individuals around you, which you would really like. You know, Libra loves someone wise that they can debate with, that understands their points, because not everybody does, and I know that gets annoying. And also, if you can come to terms with finding peace and centeredness within yourself, you won't be as jostled by what other people do. This can also bring surprise love out of the blue. So if you're someone that's looking for that, or even a surprise business contact or clients, it could work in a positive way to bring a surprise element to bringing someone in. And these are long-term themes, so you'll hear me touching in to talk about this for years. But it is something that is happening right now too. Okay, so these are the things most on my mind for Libras. Now I'm going to drop in the Mercury Retrograde tutorial. You may be tempted to skip that, and you have my blessing if you want to. You can just fast forward till you see me back on the screen when I'm going to talk about the general transits and give you dates to note and other things about the tone of the month that I believe you need to know. But I do recommend you watch the tutorial, because we spend half of our lives in Mercury Retrograde. And the things I talk about in that tutorial are going to come up for many, if not all of you, in some way. So if you can understand it better, you can move through this time most gracefully. Okay, so let's check out the tutorial now. Hi, this is going to be a quick tutorial of the energy of Mercury as it relates to the retrograde cycle, and the things to keep in mind that are most important to hold in your consciousness as we go through this phase. So the first thing to know is that Mercury is retrograde or in its shadow, pre or post shadow period for about half of the year. So half of our lives we are in this. That's why it's really important to understand it. The second thing to know is that Mercury is retrograde for 3-ish weeks at a time, and there's about a 2-ish week before and after shadow transit. So the pre-transit shadow period and the post-shadow transit period. So all in all, it's about a 7-ish week process. So it is kind of long at a time. And the implications of Mercury retrograde are very strongly seen in this pre-shadow period, and especially in the first part of this post-shadow period, and then they tend to linger and just sort of wear off towards the end of that post-shadow period. Mercury rules communication and mobility, so anything involving speaking, writing, communicating, publishing, your devices that you use for communicating, your phones, computers, things like that, your cars, vehicles, walking, your mobility, your capacity to be mobile, your legs, the things that make you able to be mobile. If someone's in a wheelchair, their wheelchair would be there, or whatever it is that is related to your personal mobility. One thing to note as I describe the rest of this is that for people who are born with Mercury retrograde at birth, sometimes they feel the opposite effects of what everybody else feels during a Mercury retrograde period, and that things can flow even better for them during a Mercury retrograde period than when Mercury is direct. So if you have come to notice that, it may be because you have Mercury retrograde at birth. And it also may mean that you have, even if you don't officially have Mercury retrograde, and this is definitely a way more technical thing for you to have to try to figure out, but if your if Mercury was in a pre or post shadow period close to the retrograde, you could experience having Mercury retrograde from the birth perspective, even though it wouldn't as readily show up on your chart. So that's an important thing to note as well. Okay, so what tends to happen when Mercury's in retrograde is that there are changes to plans. There is uncertainty or confusion about what direction to take. There are plans that were made that are called into question. They may turn out to work out, but they get called into question. Things get called into question. Relationships get called into question. The use of devices and transportation gets called into question. Plans get called into question. And then sometimes they'll work out and sometimes they won't. But this calling into question is a typical Mercury retrograde thing. The topics of travel will often come up, and this can be a fine time for travel. There is a misconception that you shouldn't travel during Mercury retrograde. That's not true. You just have to be more aware because plans tend to change. Gates tend to change at the last minute. Issues with a car tend to come up if you're on a road trip, if you haven't, gotten everything checked out first or whatever, or even sometimes if you did. Impediments to travel, changes. When you're making agreements, Mercury also rules agreements. So if you're agreeing to something, the odds are that you're going to change what you're agreeing to. So it doesn't lend itself as well for long-term or rigid agreements. There are exceptions. If you're in there, don't worry. There are exceptions. But if you are negotiating during Mercury retrograde, you're either not seeing the whole picture, someone is purposely or inadvertently hiding something from you, or there are things that are coming that you're not aware of that are going to change how you can interact in the agreement that you've made. So in general, it is a good idea to be flexible. Flexible, temporary bridge agreements are like the theme that I like to put out there to best use this energy. Let's say you have to negotiate something or you're agreeing to something, and if it's minor or low stakes, you don't have to worry as much. It's the big things, that are more important. But there could be some minor things where it would be helpful to know this. Okay, so keep your flexibility. Try to make a interim or bridge agreement. So like, for instance, let's say you're trying to get a tenant in a house or in a professional space, and Mercury's in retrograde. Something like a month to month, totally awesome to embark on in a Mercury retrograde because you can get out of it. Something like a 3-month lease or even 3 to 6 months, something short term. You can make something for a month and then renegotiate when the planets are more clear, the energy is more clear. So those are ways that I like to deal with the Mercury retrograde. And it's definitely a good time to be aware that you might have things happen to your cars and phones and stuff. In general, I don't love this time as the best time to get a new device or car unless you can help it or unless it's a short-term or interim device. Like let's say you get a temporary phone to bridge you over something, that's more appropriate. Or you get a car that you plan to have for 3 to 6 months. Or, something like that. But for things that you're hoping to keep long-term, the retrogrades tend to make it shorter term. And that's typical. Another place to be careful is launches. Big, awesome, life-changing, once-in-a-lifetime launches are not the ones you want to have when Mercury is in retro. However, let's say you're a teacher and you teach classes twice a year and Mercury retrograde, is the time for your re-enrollment. Re-enrollment is much better supported. But do also expect that when you have launches in a Mercury retrograde cycle, that more people are going to be wishy-washy and there's more of a chance for people that have joined that are going to leave the class. So, it's not always a reliable time frame for trying to get people to commit to things, depending on what the nature of it is. It's hard. Commitments get a little bit more difficult. So basically, the things to remember for Mercury retrograde is the flexibility, be extra careful, check your plans, your travel plans and other things and documents and agreements extra carefully. And then anything that has the prefix re, pretty much, there's going to be exceptions to this, but rejuvenation, redoing, re-editing, rethinking, reconsidering, even rest. It's a good time to rest. Anything like that where you're like going back over something is better indicated than something brand new, if possible, unless the new thing is short term or a bridge or something you consider doing, like, oh, I've always wanted to try that. Maybe I'll take that class, and the class is, 6 months or whatever. That can be fine. What we really need to have caution with is the bigger things and the things that are higher stakes, etc. Mercury retrograde can be an amazing time. You can get lots of stuff done, inspiration from the past, tying up loose ends from the past, and preparing for a nice fertile ground for future wonderful things. I'm calling the theme of July 2019 for all signs 3 times the manifestation power, bold new directions, and time to be brave. It's always interesting when we have a transit like Mercury retrograde that brings this eye to the past, coinciding with so much potential for new energy. So we've got 2 intense eclipses this month, plus 2 new moons this month. Whenever we have a month with 2 new moons, it opens up more potentials for brilliant new paths, and the same thing with the eclipses. But this is happening all under the cover of this Mercury retrograde. So that means that themes from the past, things worked on in the past, contacts from the past, plans from the past, are all going to factor in very heavily to the new opportunities that come. So we talked at length about Mercury retrograde and where that hit in your chart or will hit in your chart, and also what the implications are there. So we're going to go into some additional things to know about this month. The eclipses obviously are bringing massive changes. The transits this month are pretty equal as far as sweet or challenging, and a lot of them could just really go either way. So when we have a situation where there's a transit that's occurring and someone can either manifest something positive or something challenging from it, it really makes it more important for us to watch how we're looking at things. The perspective that we have on life, the perspective that we have on everything, colors, changes, effects, how we experience things. So the more you can be well rested and positive can help you to frame the energies that come in. And the more present you can be emotionally is also going to flavor this month, because with the eclipses and with the Cancer energies and even with the retrograde energies, there's a massive amount of emotion this month. High emotional tides this month, for better and worse. So amazing culminations, things that you've been hoping for forever can just come to you at this time. I always think about the eclipse time as the vision of the spider with the web. You've spent all this time until July weaving this beautiful web. And sometimes those webs can get really big. I think about the webs I've seen like in the rainforest in Costa Rica, like, taller than a person, these gigantic webs. And of course the spiders that go along with them are pretty big too. But in any case, this web that you've created, now the eclipse time and the retrograde time are both times to just sit back and see what food comes to you. It's not the best time for initiating something huge, although sometimes chance or other things force it to happen that way. But the more you can be flexible, be relaxed, be well rested, not be super intent on pushing an agenda, being flexible, the more you can observe what is coming to you so that you can strike or take in according to what feels the best with the options that come to you. It's a fine time for research, but it's not the best time necessarily to try to push something to happen. It's more of an acceptance of what's coming in and what you're going to do with it. A lot of the eclipse news and changes may have already taken place before the actual eclipses, which occur this month. So you may already be steeped in, rolling around in, coping with, for better and worse, the eclipse changes. So the Cancer energy is bringing in a lot of emotion, a lot of tilt towards the energy of home, family, housing, home projects, things involving childhood psychology, upbringing, having to take some steps backwards in order to be able to take future steps forward. But there's also a coinciding energy of Leo. And Leo is going to give us the audacity to do something with the opportunities that come to us. Also a zest and a passion and creative expression. So in general, new moons and full moons have power for positive changes and things coming to a head, things coming out into the open, things coming to manifestation. When we have eclipses an eclipse on a new moon or a full moon, it gives us 3 times the manifestation power. So 3 times the new beginnings, 3 times the drama or culmination, or things coming to a head. So it's just definitely a powerful month, very, very, very intense. Intensity is another keynote of this time. As we talked about in the June horoscopes, and definitely if you haven't watched my June horoscopes, you want to do that because I cover the eclipses in detail. There's so much to talk about for this time period. I couldn't fit it all in 1 month. So in June, I go into detail and tell you exactly where the eclipses will hit for you and what manifestations you can see. So definitely rewatch that here in July, even if you watch them in June, so that you can be better poised for understanding the changes that are coming. But in general, the eclipse cycle of Cancer and Capricorn bring in lots of changes to home and family and work and your place out in the world, things with mother and father, and your maternal and paternal energies. Look back to 2009 to 2011 and 2000 to 2001. Those are the times when we experienced this Capricorn Cancer eclipse cycles in the past. So you might see patterns. And I have gotten this question, if those have been your worst times, don't worry, that's not necessarily going to happen again. It's the themes that are brought up that are common to have a continuum. So the areas of life that were a focus, those will likely be a focus at this time. And it doesn't have to manifest the same way that it did. Okay, so I'm just going to hit a couple of highlights here as certain dates to note that are my favorite or my most you have to watch out for. If you want a complete list of the aspects that are occurring and what's involved with those aspects, what planets and signs are at play, and what you can expect from those, definitely sign up for my free email newsletter at anniehelpsyou.com. You'll also get my 28-day virtual coaching program called Shine for free when you sign up for my free email newsletter. Plus, you'll get a written, detailed email newsletter a month before, just like I do the horoscopes a month before, of the dates and the aspects and what to look out for, so you have them for your planning purpose and you get those a month early. So you can see that at anniehelpsyou.com. But we'll hit some highlights here. The new moons are going to be, well, first the new moon and the solar eclipse, 10 degrees of Cancer, is on July 2nd. So that is a time of major intensity. I do have blogs on my website for how to make the most of each new moon and each full moon in the different signs. So definitely check those out. Mercury is going to go retrograde at 4 degrees of Leo and back to 23 degrees of Cancer. We talked about this at length, but that's occurring on July 7th, and that pretty much goes until July 31st or August 1st, depending on your time zone. The whole month is covered in Mercury retrograde. We've got some challenges to look out for as far as squares and oppositions throughout the month, and you can see the details of that in my newsletter. But one of the things that I most want you to be aware of is the full moon eclipse on July 16th. That is a lunar eclipse, 24 degrees of Capricorn, lots of intensity around that time, things coming to culmination. Be extra careful and also look out for extra awards and things that you've worked on from the past that can come in a big way. I always try to keep that period of time a little bit light If possible, sometimes it's unavoidable, but just be extra careful around that time. What they say about the full moons with, crazy things happening is really true. Whenever you watch these mystical shows or like Merlin or whatever, it's always a full moon when these, crazy things go on. So just take note of that and be prepared to deal with whatever comes. The second full moon, or rather the second new moon, is at 8 degrees of Leo, and that's on July 31st, or thereabouts, depending on your time zone. So the second new moon in the calendar month is a black moon, and there's extra power at this time for wishes and new beginnings. So plenty of opportunities for new beginnings. This month is just chock full of them. Throughout the month, we have some challenges with Uranus, we have challenges with Pluto, we have challenges, Pluto, Uranus, kind of a theme there, Saturn. So some of the outer planets are in challenging configurations, and this can bring tests, but it doesn't have to be a be-all, end-all. Often it can bring overstimulation, and that could be a major theme of this month. We could get through this month and have complete positive outcomes and no negativity at all. Certain people will have that experience. Other people will have massive drama and lots of challenges, but there's no one way it has to go. It's wide open here. But understanding the element of the opposition is important because oppositions are pulling us in two different directions. So be prepared to be pulled in two different directions, and also be prepared to be overstimulated. This is going to be an incredibly busy month physically, like moving around, doing stuff. Emotionally, it will be busy. You will be handling things. You might be holding space for other people who are dealing with changes. During eclipse cycles, we'll often see people around us going through massive change, and sometimes we are too. So it's hard to tell at this point if you're going to be a space holder for other people as they go through these big changes, or if you're going to be one of the people going through the big changes, or both. Sometimes in eclipse time, we're going through these big changes and we're also holding space for other people doing that. So be prepared to be overstimulated emotionally and mentally. That's why this theme of just trying to be well rested is really important, because we know that you can't really handle things as well when you're tired. So the more you can be not tired and take your supplements and, do whatever you need to for support, do your walks, do your exercise, you're going to much better be able to use the energies that are present at this time. And there are a lot of sweet aspects in between these challenging ones. So there are some nuisances, but there are lots of sweet things too. Okay, so definitely go to my website, anniehelpsyou.com. I have an extensive astrology blog plus other blogs that you can check out there on different topics. If you resonate with how I teach, you would love to learn, my astrology apprenticeship program is open for enrollment, and I will teach you everything you need to know to do astrology professionally, or if you just want it for your self-development process, it's amazing for that as well. You can check out all the other kinds of goodies I have on my site, including subliminal recordings that I create for you to help and train your brain to the positive changes that you're trying to make. And you can also see my other professional development courses there. Definitely check out my book, Radical Prayer, Transform Your Life and the World in 28 Days. As I mentioned before, it has become a purse friend. It has become a car friend, a bedtime companion. It's just an amazing book for the spiritual seeker to really help you to use the power of word and prayer and intention to manifest the positive changes you want to see in your life. Check out my husband's website, IamHelios.com. He has amazing options now for you to use audio, subliminal, power-packed, frequency-enhanced recordings to mitigate the negative energies of transits and to enhance the positive energies of astrological transits. So we've worked together in the way of trying to figure out what resources would be best for you based on the things I see in the charts. So you can see the options for audios that can help you to maximize the transit. So you can check that out at IamHelios.com. Also, you can book a live reading at my site, AnnieHelpsYou.com, either with me or my amazing apprentice, Marilee. And you can also book sessions with my husband, B.R. Newman, at IamHelios.com. Okay, so those are the things I most have in mind for you this month. I hope you have a wonderful month, and I'll see you next month. Bye.